The metal floors of the Coalition ship Harmony's Edge rang with heavy footsteps as alien soldiers moved through the corridors. Jake Collins walked quietly among them, his human boots making barely a sound compared to the thunderous steps of the Korthok warriors. The ship carried fighters from 6 different worlds, all working together in the Great War against the Separatists. Jake had been aboard the ship for 3 months now. Every day was the same. The aliens looked at him and his fellow humans like they were children playing soldier. The Korthok thought humans were weak. The Zenthari believed humans were stupid. Even the smaller species treated them like pets that somehow learned to hold weapons. The worst of them all was Lieutenant Zexai. The Korthok warrior stood 8 feet tall and weighed over 400 pounds. His skin looked like black armor. Plates and his forearms could crush steel. He never let the humans forget how pathetic he thought they were. Jake entered the training room, where Zexai was already waiting with his squad. The Korthok's yellow eyes fixed on Jake with their usual look of disgust. 3 other human Marines followed Jake into the room. Amy Rodriguez checked her weapon, while Chris Turner adjusted his gear. The 4th human, Pete Morgan, looked nervous. As always, when facing the alien warriors, look what crawls in, Zexai said in his deep voice. The soft little humans come to play war games again. The other Korthok warriors laughed. Their laughter sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake said nothing. He had learned that fighting with words only made things worse. Today we practice combat scenarios, Zexai announced. The humans will watch from the side while real warriors show them how fighting is done. Jake stepped forward. Sir, the mission orders say, all species train together. Zexai's 4 eyes narrowed. Mission orders? You think you can tell me about orders, little human? Your people have been in space for what, 50 years? My people have been warriors for 5,000 years? That may be true, sir, but we're all on the same side now. The Korthok moved closer to Jake. Even sitting down, Zexai would be taller than the human. Standing up, he looked like a mountain of muscle and armor plating. Same side, Zexai laughed. Humans are useful for cleaning toilets and fixing broken machines. You are not warriors. They'll break if someone looks at you wrong. Your bones are made of soft material. Your skin tears like paper. One of my people could fight 10 of yours and still have energy left for dinner. Amy Rodriguez stepped up beside Jake. Maybe we should test that theory. The room went quiet. Even the other Korthok stopped their conversations to listen. Zexa looked down at Amy like she was an insect that had just spoken. What did you say, tiny female? Said maybe we should test your theory. You claim 1 Korthok can beat 10 humans? Let's see if that's true. Zexai's laugh shook the walls. You want to challenge me? You? I could break you with 1 hand. Not me alone, Amy said. All 4 of us against you. Hand-to-hand combat, no weapons. If humans are so weak, it should be easy for you. The other aliens in the room started gathering around. Word was spreading fast through the ship's communication system. A challenge had been made. Korthok Honor demanded that Zexai accept or lose face in front of everyone. Jake wanted to stop this. Amy was brave, but she was also stubborn. This would not end well for any of them. But before he could speak, Zexai was already nodding. Yes, I accept. For soft humans against 1 Korthok warrior. When I am done with you, maybe the rest of your kind will remember their place. The training area was quickly cleared. Other species began filing in to watch. Zenthari, with their large heads and thin bodies, whispered to each other in their musical language. The insect-like Vexstar clicked their mandibles in what might have been excitement. Even some of the ship's officers came to see what was happening. Jake tried one more time. Amy, we don't have to do this. Yes, we do, she replied. I'm tired of being treated like garbage. If we lose, at least we tried. Chris Turner cracked his knuckles. I'm with Amy. Time to show these aliens what humans can do. Pete Morgan looked like he might throw up, but he nodded too. We stick together. The 4 humans spread out in a circle around Zexai. The Korthok warrior looked relaxed, almost bored. He stretched his forearms and rolled his massive shoulders. Remember, Jake said quietly to his team, He's strong, but he's also big. Use that against him. Move fast. Don't let him grab you. The ship's computer announced the start of the match. HFY immediately charged toward Amy, thinking the female would be the easiest target. But Amy was ready. She dropped low and rolled to the side, causing the Korthok to stumble past her. Chris moved in from behind, jumping onto HFY's back. The alien warrior reached back with two of his arms and grabbed Chris, throwing him across the room like he weighed nothing. Chris hit the wall hard but got back up, shaking his head clear. Pete tried to tackle one of HFY's legs, but the Korthok simply lifted his foot and stepped on Pete's back, pinning him to the floor. Jake rushed in to help his friend, ducking under a massive punch that would have taken his head off. The fight continued for 10 minutes. The humans used speed and teamwork, but it wasn't enough. One by one, they were worn down by HFY's incredible strength. Amy was the last one standing, blood running from her nose, before the Korthok finally caught her and held her in the air. Enough, HFY declared. This was too easy. Humans are even weaker than I thought. The alien crowd began to disperse, their entertainment over. Jake helped his teammates to their feet. They were bruised and beaten, but not seriously hurt. HFY had been careful not to cause permanent damage. As they left the training room, Jake heard the whispers starting. Word would spread through the ship about how easily one Korthok had defeated for human marines. Their reputation, already low, would sink even further. But Jake noticed something else. In the corner of the room, an old Xanthari officer had been watching. The alien's large eyes showed something that looked almost like respect. Maybe some of the other species understood that the humans had at least tried to fight back. That night, Jake sat in his small quarters writing a report. The ship's communication system suddenly came alive with an emergency signal. All personnel were ordered to the briefing room immediately. Jake met his team in the corridor. Amy's face was swollen, but she walked straight. Chris favored his left arm where he had hit the wall. Pete moved slowly, but seemed okay. The briefing room was packed with soldiers from all species. Captain Veltar, a tall Xanthari with silver skin, stood at the front of the room. His voice was calm but serious. We have received a distress call from the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Separatist forces have attacked the facility. All mining personnel are trapped. We are the closest ship and must respond immediately. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Kepler 442b was known throughout the Coalition as a nightmare world. The gravity was nearly twice Earth normal. Atmosphere was thin and toxic. The weather could kill you in minutes. The planet's conditions make this mission extremely dangerous, Captain Veltar continued. Only our strongest personnel will be sent. The Korthok will lead the mission. Jake looked around the room. HFY sat with his chest puffed out, proud. To be chosen for such an important mission? The other aliens nodded approvingly. Once again, humans would be left behind, while the real warriors did the important work. But then Captain Veltar surprised everyone. However, we will also need technical support and backup personnel. Some humans will accompany this mission. Jake felt a mix of excitement and fear. Finally, a chance to prove themselves. But on a world like Kepler 442b, proving themselves might also mean dying. The dropship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Jake gripped his seat, harness, and tried not to think about the planet's reputation. So gravity meant everything weighed twice as much. The air was poison without breathing gear. The weather could change from calm to deadly in minutes. Beside him sat Amy Rodriguez and Chris Turner. Pete Morgan had been left on the ship for medical duty. Three humans were the only members of their species on this mission. Everyone else was either Korthok or Xanthari. HFY sat across from Jake, his forearms crossed over his massive chest. The alien warrior looked calm, almost bored. Two other Korthok warriors flanked him. Their names were Druckmer and Gex Hall, and they seemed just as confident as their leader. The Xanthari technicians looked nervous. Their thin bodies and large heads were not built for heavy gravity worlds. Dr. Sinvel, the mission science officer, kept checking his breathing apparatus. Over and over, the other two Xanthari engineers named Pixtai and Jordan whispered to each other in their musical language. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, human officer, had briefed them before departure. The mining colony had been attacked by separatist forces. 3 hours ago, all communication was lost. The rescue window was small because another storm system was approaching the planet. Remember, Hayes had said this is a rescue mission. Get in, find survivors, and get out. The planet will kill you if the enemies don't.
Ow.
They were minutes away from landing. The pilot, a skilled Korthok named Vector, spoke over the communication system. Touchdown in 2 minutes. Weather is calm, but that won't last. Intelligence shows enemy forces have left the area, but stay alert. Jake checked his weapon one more time. The pulse rifle felt heavier than usual, though he knew that was just his imagination. The real weight increase would come when they left the ship. The dropship hit the ground hard. Through the small windows, Jake could see the mining colony in the distance. Smoke rose from several buildings. The landscape around them was rocky and barren, with strange purple plants growing in patches. "Move out," HFY commanded as the rear door opened. Jake stepped onto the planet's surface and immediately felt the difference. His legs nearly buckled under the increased weight. His backpack, normally easy to carry, now felt like a bag of rocks. Every step required more effort than usual. The Korthok warriors seemed less affected. Their powerful builds were better suited for heavy gravity, but even they moved more slowly than normal. The Zenthari had the worst time. Dr. Sinvel nearly fell over when he tried to walk. Engineers had to support each other. Humans, HFY said with disgust. Already struggling, and we just got here. Jake ignored the comment and focused on moving. The colony was 2 miles away across rough terrain. In normal gravity, that would be an easy walk. Here, it would be like carrying a heavy load the entire way. The team spread out in formation. The Korthak took point while the humans covered the flanks. The Zenthari stayed in the middle, protected by the others. They moved slowly but steadily toward the smoking buildings. After 30 minutes of walking, they reached the colony's outer fence. The metal barrier had been blown apart in several places. Scorch marks showed where energy weapons had been fired. Bodies of human miners lay scattered around the entrance. Separatists hit them hard, Chris observed. It looks like they didn't have time to fight back. HFY examined the damage. Professional work. Military strike team, not random raiders. They entered the colony carefully, checking each building for survivors or enemies. The main administration building was a burned shell. The equipment, storage was completely destroyed. The residential area still stood, though damaged. In the third building they searched, Amy called out, "I've got survivors." Jake rushed to her position. Inside, a reinforced storage room. 12 humans huddled together. Men, women, and children, all looking terrified. An older man with gray hair stepped forward. "Thank God," he said. "I'm Colony Manager Frank Davis. The Separatists hit us without warning. Most of our people are dead or taken prisoner." "How many prisoners?" Jake asked. "Maybe 20. They took our youngest and strongest workers. Left the rest of us to die when the storm hits." HFY pushed past Jake. "Where did they take the prisoners?" Davis pointed toward the mountains. "Mining Station 7. It's 15 miles north."
Ow, but...
"You can't reach it before the storm arrives." The Korthak warriors studied the sky. Dark clouds were building on the horizon. "How long do we have? 4 hours? Maybe 5. After that, the winds will be strong enough to tear a man apart." Jake looked at his teammates. They had found 12 survivors who needed immediate evacuation. But 20 more people were still in enemy hands. The dropship could carry everyone, but only if they could reach Mining Station 7 and back before the storm hit. "We split up," HFY decided. "I take my warriors to the mining station. You humans escort the survivors to the extraction point." "Not smart," Jake said. "I'll need backup at the mining station." HFY laughed. "I need backup. 3 Korthok warriors against some separatist scum. We will rescue the prisoners and meet you at the ship." Before Jake could argue further, the ground shook. Everyone looked up to see 3 enemy aircraft approaching fast. The separatists were coming back. "Move," HFY shouted. "Everyone to cover." The team scattered as the first energy blasts hit the ground around them. Jake grabbed two of the younger survivors and pulled them behind a concrete barrier. Amy and Chris got the others to safety while the Korthok warriors returned fire. Enemy ships made several attack runs before flying away. When the shooting stopped, Jake counted their people. Everyone was alive, but the situation had changed. Our dropship, Dr. Sinvel said in his high voice. They were targeting our ship. Looked toward their landing zone. Black smoke rose from the area where their transport had been waiting. His heart sank as he realized what this meant. Zexa was thinking the same thing. Vector, report status. The pilot's voice crackled over their communicators. Ship is damaged, but not destroyed. I need at least 6 hours for repairs, maybe more. We don't have 6 hours, Davis said. Storm will be here in 4. Jake studied their situation. They had 12 survivors who needed evacuation. 20 more prisoners. At the mining station, a damaged ship that couldn't fly, a deadly storm approaching. There's another option, Davis said quietly. Emergency shelter at grid reference 77 Alpha. It's built to survive the storms, but it's 15 miles from here. Looked at the distance readings on his scanner. 15 miles in. Heavy gravity with civilians. Impossible. Not impossible, Jake said. Difficult, but not impossible. The Korthok warrior stared at him. You think you humans can carry these people 15 miles before the storm hits? I think we have to try. Amy and Chris nodded agreement. Zenthari looked terrified but determined. Even the survivors seemed ready to make the attempt. Zexai considered their options. The mining station rescue was now secondary to basic. Survival. Everyone needed to reach shelter before the weather turned deadly. Fine, he said finally. We all go to the emergency shelter. But when civilians start slowing us down, we leave them behind. Jake wanted to argue, but there was no time. The storm clouds were getting closer. Dark winds were already stirring. The dust around them, they gathered what supplies they could carry and began the long walk toward safety. The survivors stayed in the middle of the group, while the soldiers provided protection. The increased gravity made every step a struggle. After 2 miles, the first civilian fell behind. An elderly woman named Mrs. Chen couldn't keep up the pace. Her breathing was labored and her legs shook with exhaustion. Leave her, Zexai commanded. She's slowing everyone down. Jake stopped walking. We're not leaving anyone behind. Then you all die when the storm hits. There has to be another way. But as Jake looked at Mrs. Chen, struggling to breathe, and then at the other civilians, who were already showing signs of exhaustion, he wondered if Zexai might be right. Could they really carry 12 people 15 miles through heavy gravity before the storm killed them all? The wind was getting stronger. In the distance, he could see the first signs of the approaching tempest. They had maybe 3 hours left. Before the weather became unsurvive, Jake made a decision that would change everything. Jake knelt beside Mrs. Chen as she gasped for air. The elderly woman had collapsed after walking only 2 miles. Her face was pale and sweat covered her forehead. Round them, the other survivors looked just as exhausted. I can't go on, Mrs. Chen whispered. Leave me here. Save the others. Zexai stood over them, his forearms crossed. The human females speak sense. We cannot carry dead weight. She's not dead weight, Jake said firmly. She's a person who will get everyone. Killed, the Korthok warrior replied. Look at your other civilians. Half of them are ready to collapse. We have 13 miles left, and 2 hours before the storm hits. Jake looked around at the group. Davis was helping a young mother carry her 6-year-old son. 2 teenage miners supported an injured man between them. The Zenthari were barely walking, their thin legs shaking under the heavy gravity. Amy Rodriguez moved close to Jake. We could make better time without them, she said quietly. Zexai is right about that. Since when do we abandon people? Jake asked. Since staying with them means everyone dies. Chris Turner pointed at the approaching storm. The dark clouds now covered half the sky. Lightning flashed inside the black mass. The wind was getting stronger every minute. Jake, I want to save them. Too, but look at those clouds. We're not going to make it at this pace. Even Dr. Sinvel, The Zenthari scientist spoke up. The storm will kill us all if we don't move faster. Perhaps we should consider alternatives. Jake felt the weight of command crushing down on him. Everyone was looking to him for answers. The logical choice was clear. Leave the slowest civilians behind and save who they could. It was basic military math. But Jake had not joined the coalition military to abandon innocent people. He stood up and walked over to Mrs. Chen. "Can you climb on my back?" The old woman stared at him in confusion. "What? I'm going to carry you? Can you hold on if I lift you?" Zexai laughed, the sound booming across the rocky landscape. "You cannot be serious. Carry her? Human, you can barely walk yourself in this gravity." Jake ignored him and helped Mrs. Chen to her feet. "Amy, Chris, can you take some of the others?" Amy looked at the exhausted civilians, then at Jake. Something in his expression made her nod. "I can take the boy." Chris sighed but moved toward the injured miner. "I'll help with him." "This is madness," Zexai declared. "It will collapse within a mile. Then we lose soldiers and civilians." Jake lifted Mrs. Chen onto his back. She weighed maybe 120 pounds normally. In the heavy gravity, she felt like 240 pounds. His legs nearly buckled under the extra weight. "We're not leaving anyone behind," Jake said through gritted teeth. "That's final." Took his first step, then another. Each movement required tremendous effort. His backpack already weighed twice normal, and now he carried a full-grown person as well. But he kept walking. Amy picked up the 6-year-old boy. The child wrapped his arms around her neck as she struggled forward. Chris and one of the teenage miners lifted the injured man between them, sharing the burden. The group began moving again, much slower than before. Jake could hear Zexai grumbling behind him, but the Korthok warrior followed the group. So did his 2 companions and the Zenthari. After half a mile, Jake's breathing became heavy. Sweat poured down his face and soaked his uniform. His leg. Muscles burned with each step. Mrs. Chen noticed his struggle. "Put me down," she said. "I can try to walk again." "Save your strength," Jake replied. "We're going to make it." But privately, he wondered if that was true. They had 12 miles left to go. The storm was getting closer. His body was already screaming in protest. Amy was struggling too. The boy was light, but in heavy gravity, carrying even a child became difficult quickly. Her steps were shorter now, and she stopped more often to rest. Chris and the teenager were having the hardest time with the injured man. They had to stop every few hundred yards to switch positions and catch their breath. Zexai moved up beside Jake. "This is foolish. You will kill yourself trying to carry her. Then I'll die trying," Jake said. "Why? She means nothing to you." "You met her an hour ago." Jake didn't answer immediately. He was too focused on putting one foot in front of the other. But after a few minutes, he spoke. "She's a person. That's enough." The Korthok warrior walked in silence for a while, watching Jake struggle with his burden. Finally, he spoke again. "Humans are strange creatures." They reached the 5-mile mark as the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm was still an hour away, but its outer edges were starting to reach them. The wind picked up, making walking even harder. Jake stumbled and nearly fell. Mrs. Chen held on tight, trying not to make his balance worse. Behind them, Amy was breathing hard, but still carrying the boy. Chris and his helper were falling further behind with the injured man. "Rest stop," Zexai called out. Everyone collapsed where they stood. Jake lowered Mrs. Chen carefully to the ground and sat down beside her. His entire body ached. His legs felt like they were on fire. Dr. Sinvel checked his scanner. "Storm will reach us in 45 minutes. We need to cover 8 more miles." "Impossible," one of the other Zenthari said. "We cannot move that fast, carrying civilians." Zexai looked at Jake, who was trying to catch his breath. "Human, you are dying on your feet. Leave the old female here. We might still save the others." Mrs. Chen grabbed Jake's arm. "He's right. I'm too old and slow. Don't let me kill everyone else." Jake looked into her eyes. She was scared but determined. Ready to sacrifice herself for the group, it would be easy to leave her. Everyone would understand. It was the smart choice. Instead, Jake stood up and helped her onto his back again. "Nobody gets left behind," he said simply. This time, something changed in Zex's expression. The Korthak warrior stared at Jake for a long moment. Then, without speaking, he moved over to where Chris was struggling with the injured man. "I will carry him," Zex announced. Chris looked shocked. "Sir, you heard me. I will carry the injured human." Zex lifted the unconscious miner easily. Even in heavy gravity, the Korthak's strength was impressive. Looked at Jake, who was already walking again with Mrs. Chen on his back. If humans can do this thing, then Korthak can do it better. The other two Korthak warriors looked at their leader in confusion. Drakmer spoke in their harsh language. Zexai answered in the same tongue, his voice sharp with command. Reluctantly, his warriors moved to help other civilians. Drakmer picked up an elderly man, while Gexel helped a woman with a twisted ankle. Even the Zenthari began helping where they could. Dr. Sinvel took some of the supply packs from the humans. To lighten their load, the group moved faster now. Jake still struggled with each step, but knowing that others were sharing the burden gave him strength. Mrs. Chen whispered encouragement in his ear, telling him about her grandchildren and why she wanted to live to see them again. Amy smiled. As she walked beside him, the boy sleeping on her shoulder, "It's like you started something." "Just doing what's right," Jake replied. But he noticed how Zexal kept looking at him. The Korthak warrior seemed to be studying Jake, trying to understand something that puzzled him. The rain was falling harder now. Lightning flashed overhead. The wind howled across the rocky ground. They had 6 miles to go and 30 minutes. Before the storm's full fury reached them, Jake's vision was starting to blur from exhaustion. His legs shook with every step. But Mrs. Chen was still alive on his back, and that was what mattered. The real test was just beginning. The rain turned into a downpour as the group struggled across the rocky ground. Jake could barely see 10 feet ahead through the thick sheets of water. Mrs. Chen held tight to his shoulders as he stumbled forward, his boots slipping on the wet stones. Lightning crashed overhead every few seconds. The thunder was so loud it hurt their ears. Wind whipped at their faces, making it hard to breathe. The storm was getting worse faster than anyone had expected. Jake's legs felt like they were made of lead. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. He had been carrying Mrs. Chen for over 4 miles now. His uniform was soaked with sweat and rain. Blood seeped through his boots from the blisters on his feet, but he kept walking. Behind him, Amy still carried the sleeping boy. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but she never complained. Chris helped an elderly man who could barely stand. The teenager who had been helping earlier was now being carried by Gexel. Gexel Zexai walked beside Jake, the injured miner still unconscious on the Korthak's back. The alien warrior watched Jake closely, his yellow eyes studying every stumbling step the human took. "You should stop," Zexai said during a brief pause in the thunder. "Your body is failing." Jake wiped rain from his eyes. "I'm fine." "You are not fine. You can barely stand. The old female will understand if you must leave her." Mrs. Chen heard him. "The alien is right, son. I've lived my life. Don't die for me." Jake adjusted his grip on her legs and started walking. "Again, we're all getting out of this together." Dr. Sinvel appeared beside them, his thin body bent against the wind. "The shelter is still 3 miles away. At this pace, the storm will reach full strength before we arrive." As if summoned by his words, a massive gust of wind knocked people to the ground. One of the surviving miners was picked up and thrown several feet before landing hard on the rocks. Davis helped him to his feet, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "We need to move faster," Zexai shouted over the growing wind. "Can't," Jake gasped. His vision was blurring. Each breath felt like fire in his lungs. "Going as fast as I can." Zexai stopped walking and stared at Jake. The human was swaying on his feet, barely conscious, but still moving forward with an old woman on his back. In Korthak culture, warriors were taught that survival meant making hard choices. The weak were left behind so the strong could live. But this human was choosing to be weak. He was choosing to carry a burden that might kill him. And somehow, That choice was making him stronger than any Korthak warrior Zexai had ever known. Drakmer, Zexai called to his companion. Take my load. The other Korthak warrior looked confused, but took the injured miner from Zexai's back. Zexai then moved in front of Jake and knelt down. Give me the old female. Jake stopped walking. Rain streamed down his face as he stared at the massive alien. What? I will carry her. You can barely stand. I can handle it. No, you cannot. And we both know it. Give her to me. Jake's pride wanted to refuse. He had started this. He should finish it. But his body was betraying him. His legs were shaking so badly he could barely walk. If he collapsed, Mrs. Chen would die anyway. Reluctantly, he helped transfer Mrs. Chen to Zexai's back. The Korthak warrior lifted her easily, even in the heavy gravity. Thank you, Jake whispered. Zexai looked at him for a long moment. Why did you do this thing? Carry her when you knew it might kill you? Jake wiped blood from his mouth. He had bitten his tongue during one of his stumbles, because she needed help. That is all? No other reason? That's enough reason, the Korthak warrior shook his head in amazement. Humans are very strange. They resumed walking, moving slightly faster now that Jake was no longer carrying Mrs. Chen. But the storm was getting worse every minute. The wind was strong enough to knock people down regularly. Lightning struck the ground around them, leaving smoking craters in the rock. Amy stumbled and fell, still clutching the boy. Chris helped her up, but she was clearly at the end of her strength. The child was crying now, scared by the thunder and lightning. I can take him, offered Drakmer, speaking in broken human language. Amy looked surprised. The Korthak had never offered to help humans before. She transferred the boy too. The alien warrior's powerful arms. Dr. Sinvel was studying his scanner with growing alarm. The storm center will reach us in 10 minutes. We need shelter immediately. How far to the emergency bunker? Davis asked. 2 miles? Everyone looked at the rocky landscape ahead. 2 miles might as well have been 20. It's weather. With exhausted people, it was impossible. Jake forced himself to think through the pain and exhaustion. There had to be another option. He remembered something from the colony briefing. Davis, he called out. Are there any other shelters? Anything closer? The colony manager thought for a moment. There's an old mining cave about half a mile north, but it's not rated for storms like this. Better than being in the open, Jake said. Zexai nodded agreement. We take shelter in the cave. Wait for the storm to pass. They changed direction, struggling against the wind, toward the cave. The half-mile felt like 10 miles. People fell repeatedly. The aliens had to carry more humans as exhaustion took its toll. Jake's world had shrunk to a small circle of pain and determination. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. He focused on nothing else. When he started to fall, Amy grabbed his arm. When she needed support, Chris was there. They moved as a team, helping each other survive. The cave entrance appeared suddenly. Through the rain and darkness, it was just a hole in the rock face, barely wide enough for 2 people to enter side by side. But it was shelter. Everyone crowded inside as the storm reached its full fury outside. The cave was deeper than it looked, extending back into the mountain. It was cold and damp, but it was safe. Jake collapsed against the cave wall, his body. Finally giving up, Mrs. Chen crawled over to him, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said. You saved my life. We all saved each other, Jake replied weakly. Zexai set down his burden and stared at Jake. The human looked terrible. His uniform was torn and bloody. His face was pale from exhaustion. Shook as he tried to drink water from his canteen, but he was alive. So was everyone else. Outside, the storm raged with incredible violence. Wind speeds reached over 200 miles per hour. Lightning struck continuously. Any living thing caught in the open would be torn apart or burned to ash. Inside the cave, humans and aliens huddled together for warmth. Species that had barely spoken to each other before now shared food and water. The Korthak warriors used their large bodies to block cold air from reaching the human civilians. Zexai sat down beside Jake. Did today? Jake didn't have the energy to respond, just listened. In Korthok culture, we believe the strong survive and the weak perish. This is natural law. But you chose to be weak today. You chose to carry a burden that nearly killed you. And somehow, this made you stronger than any warrior I have known. Jake finally looked at him. I wasn't being weak. I was being human. Yes, HFY said quietly. I am beginning to understand what that means. The storm continued to rage outside. They would be trapped in the cave for hours. But they were alive, all of them, because one human had refused to leave anyone behind. And in the darkness of that cave, surrounded by the sound of wind and rain, something changed between the species. Respect was born from shared suffering. Understanding grew from witnessed sacrifice. Jake closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow they would finish the journey to the emergency shelter, and they would wait for rescue. But tonight, in this cold cave, he had learned something important about strength. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let others fall. Dawn came slowly to Kepler 44b. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind clear skies and calm air. Jake woke up stiff and sore in the cave, his body protesting every movement. Around him, humans and aliens were stirring awake. Mrs. Chen sat beside him, looking much better after a night of rest. How do you feel, son? Jake tried to smile. Like I got hit by a dropship. Amy stretched her arms and winced. At least we're all alive. Outside the cave, they could see the damage the storm had left behind. Trees were stripped bare, been moved like toys. The landscape looked like a war zone. HFY stood at the cave entrance, studying the morning sky. Storm is gone. We can reach the emergency shelter now. Dr. Sinvel checked his scanner. 1.5 miles to the shelter. The rescue ships should arrive there within hours. Everyone gathered their gear and prepared to leave. Jake tried to stand, but his legs nearly gave out. The punishment his body had taken yesterday was catching up with him. Easy there, Chris said, helping to steady him. Take your time. I'm fine, Jake insisted, though clearly he was not. HFY watched Jake struggle to walk. Something had changed in the Korthok warrior during the night. His usual look of disgust was gone, replaced by something like respect. Human HFY, said Jake. I will carry you if needed. Jake stared at him in shock. Sir, you carried the old female for miles yesterday? Saved her life. Now, you can barely walk. I will carry you to the shelter. I can make it on my own. Yes, you probably can, but you do not have to. HFY's voice was different now, warmer. Yesterday, you taught me something about strength. Today, let me help you. Jake looked around at the group. Everyone was watching this exchange between human and Korthok. After a moment, he nodded. Double quotes, thank you. The journey to the emergency shelter was much easier than the previous day. The weather was calm, and everyone had rested. The Korthok warriors continued to help carry civilians who needed assistance. The Zenthari shared their water and food supplies. Jake rode on HFY's back for the first mile, then insisted on walking the rest of the way. His legs were weak, but functional. More importantly, his spirit felt stronger than ever. They reached the emergency shelter just as 3 coalition rescue ships appeared in the sky. The vessels landed nearby, kicking up clouds of dust. Medical teams rushed out to check on the survivors. Commander Hayes was among the rescue personnel. She looked, amazed to see everyone alive and accounted for. Report Sergeant Collins, she ordered. Jake stood as straight as he could. 12 civilians rescued from the mining colony, ma'am. It's all personnel accounted for. Mission successful. Hayes looked at the exhausted group of humans and aliens. I've been getting interesting reports from your team members, Sergeant. Seems there's quite a story here. Dr. Sinvel stepped forward. Commander, I must file a report about Sergeant Collins' actions during this mission. Jake's heart sank. He expected the Zenthari to complain about the risks he had taken, about how his decisions had nearly gotten everyone killed. Instead, Dr. Sinvel said, this human showed extraordinary courage and determination. He carried a civilian for over 5 miles in heavy gravity conditions. His refusal to abandon anyone saved multiple lives. Commander Hayes raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Zexai moved to stand beside Jake. The Zenthari speaks truth. This human did something I have never seen before. He chose to suffer so others would not die. In Korthok culture, we value strength above all else. Yesterday, I learned that humans possess a different kind of strength, one that might be greater than ours. Mrs. Chen hobbled over to join them. This young man saved my life, carried me when I couldn't walk, never complained, never gave up. You should be proud of him. Commander Hayes looked at Jake with new interest. Sergeant, is this accurate? I did what anyone would do, ma'am. We don't leave people behind. Actually, Zexai interrupted. Most people would leave others behind to save themselves. That is normal behavior. What you did was not normal. It was exceptional. Medical teams finished their work and everyone boarded the rescue ships. During the flight back to the Harmony's edge, Jake sat quietly and watched the planet shrink. Below them, he thought about the last 2 days and what they meant. When they reached the ship, word of their mission had already spread. Aliens throughout the vessel looked at the human Marines with new respect. The story of Jake carrying Mrs. Chen 30 miles had become legend in just a few hours, Captain called Jake to his office the next morning. The Zenthari commander sat behind his desk studying a datapad. Sergeant Collins, I've read the mission reports. Quite remarkable. Just doing my job, sir. No, you were doing much more than your job. Captain Veltar set down the datapad. I've received a request from Lieutenant Zexai. He wants to serve under human command. Specifically your command. Jake was stunned. Sir? The Korthok warrior believes he can learn from human military methods. He's requested transfer to a human-led unit. The captain smiled. I'm promoting you to lieutenant. You'll command a new mixed-species squad designed for rescue operations in hostile environments. I don't know what to say, sir. Say yes. Need officers who understand that different species have different strengths? Your actions on Kepler 442b prove that human endurance and determination are valuable assets to the coalition. Jake accepted the promotion and his new command. Within a week, he was leading a squad that included Zexai, Amy, Chris, and several other volunteers from different species. The Korthok warrior had changed completely. He studied human military history, learning about battles where soldiers carried wounded comrades for miles. He read about humans who chose death before abandoning their friends. Your species confuses me, Zexai admitted to Jake one day during training. You are small and weak compared to Korthok. But you do things that strong people cannot do. Like what? Like carry an old woman 30 miles because it was right? Like refuse to leave anyone behind, even when it might kill you. Zexai paused. Korthok warriors are taught that survival is everything. But humans have taught me that some things are more important than survival. Word of Jake's actions spread throughout the coalition fleet. Human units began receiving new respect from alien allies. Command started assigning humans to more critical missions, recognizing their unique abilities. But the biggest change was in the relationships between species. Aliens who had mocked humans now sought to serve alongside them. They had seen what human determination could accomplish. Jake kept Mrs. Chen's contact information and wrote to her regularly. She had returned to her family on Earth. But she never forgot the young Marine who had refused to leave her behind. 6 months later, Jake's mixed species unit was deployed to another rescue mission. This time when civilians needed help, every species in the squad volunteered to carry them. Zexai was first in line. What changed your mind about humans? Jake asked the Korthok warrior as they prepared for the mission. Zexai checked his equipment and looked at Jake with respect. I learned that true strength is not about how much you can lift or how hard you can fight. True strength is about what you choose to carry, even when it hurts. Jake nodded and shouldered his pack. Ready for another walk? With you leading human, I am ready for anything. The dropship launched toward another dangerous world where people needed rescue. This time, Jake knew his team would never leave anyone behind. He had taught aliens about human endurance. They had taught him something too. Strength shared between friends becomes greater than any individual power. And sometimes the heaviest burdens become the lightest when carried together. The mockery had ended, the awe had begun. And in that change, the galaxy had become a little bit better place for everyone.